Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 3 of Build and Grow Money Matters, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. My name is Madan Mohan Rao from Your Story, and on behalf of us, Your Story, welcome to this session today. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to newer models in these tough times, Your Story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations. We feature some of the newest trendsetters in business and stalwarts of the ecosystem to help businesses power the next phase of growth and business continuity. Today, we have with us in this session Srinath Ravichandran, co founder and CEO of AgniKul Cosmos. Welcome aboard, Srinath.
Thank you, man. Thanks a lot
Srinath
for
is
having me.
from AgniKul Cosmos, a company that designs, manufactures, tests, and launches orbital class rockets for micro and nano satellites. Srinath has a degree in electrical engineering, but spent a major chunk of his career in large insurance companies like AIG and AXA before turning to rockets. So, Srinath, we've got lots of questions ahead of us for you.
Sure.
Let's begin with your backstory a little bit now. Tell us about AgniKul's growth journey. You have since 2017 been designing, manufacturing, testing, and launching orbital class rockets for micro and nano satellites. Tell us about these kinds of satellites, how you got started, and where you are today. Sheena?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of things, a couple of angles to the question. So I'll probably talk about the satellite angle first and then also talk about Agnikul, right? So when I used to be in the finance sector, I mean, I've always been an aerospace enthusiast all my life. But when I was in Los Angeles in working in certain insurance companies, one thing I was doing is doing a lot of networking about the aerospace industry itself, trying to understand what it had to offer, and that is actually right in the back, neighborhood of SpaceX, right? And I realized that all these people had satellites that are like about like this big, which you could easily lift in your hands, but they were all sitting in labs. And I used to naively ask them the question, why are these not in space? And the only answer I used to get is, rockets are full, or rockets are not ready to take them, or this waiting time is too long. It just felt like satellites are completely dependent on rockets to go to space, but rockets are not. There's a bit of an inefficiency in the market, right? And I thought about it a little bit more, and then one thing became very clear: rockets are basically just transportation systems. They take stuff from Earth and put it in space, right? And just like any transportation system, when you're doing some sort of a ride share or where you're coming together as a group, you will have to basically depend on other variables, right? So imagine you're waiting in a bus stop for a bus, right? First of all, the bus has to come. Second, the bus has to be going to where you want to go. Third, the bus should have space for you in it. And all these things also exist in rockets. When a bunch of small satellites come together and they want to ride in a rocket to space, all of these again, are important parameters. So because of this, it was starting to look like anyone can make satellites quickly, but to launch them was a big deal. So that is where the idea started. Hey, why can't we make this really quick, simple rocket that will easily take people to their satellites to orbit within a record time? Like, this is like basic idea. Of course, digging deeper, yeah, showed there are a lot of nuances to the market, but still, I think the core idea is very much the same. It is directly about building something quick and simple that can be put that can take satellites, small satellites and micro satellites to space. If what exists today, if you can compare them to buses that to go to space or trains that go to space, we are building cabs that can go to space. That's the high level summary itself. So that's how we came into being. 2017 December is when we formally incorporated as a company. We were able to get into the IIT Madras incubation system, mainly because we in the sense, me and my other co-founder Moin, we were doing a lot of cold calling, trying to figure out who are the people in academia in India who would want to work with us, because we knew that we didn't have access to the level of infrastructure that would be needed to build a rocket. And one prof from IIT Madras, after a lot of cold calls, was interested. And once he came on board, his name is Professor Satya Chakravarti, by the way. He's a rocket scientist himself. Once he came on board, things started to move. And once the IIT journey started, got access to labs, access to people. More importantly, there's a certain credibility that comes with being in an incubator of a recognized, institution, right? So we were able to ride on that as well. So that's how we started. Uh, Luckily, we have been able to raise a couple of rounds of money, and we can probably talk later about that. But that has happened, and we've also now assembled a really good and most importantly, very very hardworking set of people who are like determined to put something in orbit, and that's how we've grown over the last 3.5 years now. Yeah.
Thanks, Srinath. That's a very impressive story there. It's one thing to be a space enthusiast, another thing altogether to launch a space tech startup. Tell us a little bit more about how this model actually works now, this plug and play configuration. You just said that you are sending something like, it's like a taxi service to go to space. So you're trying to make the whole Earth to space journey simple, quick, and affordable. And you have a launch vehicle, Agniban. Tell us how all this works, Srinath.
Sure. So let us assume that let us take the experience of buying laptops, for example, right? So let us say you want to buy a laptop and I also want to buy a laptop, and let us agree that we are going to buy some Dell laptop, for example, right? Now, for your preferences, you might want higher RAM or like a larger monitor, and for me, maybe I'm just watching movies all the time and I want a really large hard disk. And probably a really large monitor, right? So our requirements, even though both of us are in the market for a laptop, our requirements are very different. Now, this exact same thing also applies to customers, or our customers rather, small satellite people who are trying to go to space. Some people want to go to a higher orbit. Some people want to go launch from a different kind of a location to go there. The mass is different and so on. So not everyone wants the same solution to go to space, and that is where the customization angle comes in, right? So our vehicle, we're calling it Agniban. By the way, Agniban means literally an arrow of fire. It's actually the Sanskrit word for rocket. That's how we got that name. Agniban is a configurable vehicle. So just like you would go to a website and choose, hey, this is the RAM I want, this is the hard disk I want, you could actually go and say, hey, this is the mass I want to put in space. This is the orbit I want to go to space to go to. This is the altitude I want to be at, and it'll tell you, okay, this is the actual configuration that we think will be the best for you. Of course, that's a starting point, and from there we can get into a conversation and talk. But that's how simple and how we really want the entire riding to space journey. That's how simple it should be, and that's what we're striving towards. So what we have done is, instead of using multiple vehicles, right, you can have A, B, C, and you can ask people to go to A or B or C. That's like a discrete jump, right? You either choose this, which means you live with some inefficiency there, or you choose this, or you go with the best of the best laptop, but then you're getting a lot of other features, but that's probably not that useful for you. Instead of that, why don't we linearly scale, right? So why don't we have a vehicle where, if the vehicle has a nominal configuration of 7 engines, right, why can't we instead fly also with 6, with 5, or with 4 engines, instead of actually building new vehicles every time? So you sort of modularize the entire problem of how to go and build a vehicle, right? So that is basically what we have done to the entire, to our approach to rocket building. And so all of the things that we usually talk about, 3D printing of rocket engines, having like this configurable vehicle, all of this thing is real. All of these things come together mainly from a context of, okay, how do I, when a customer comes to me and he says he wants to launch 30 kgs to space, how do I, within 2 weeks, without getting him to wait for anyone else to come together, or without charging him an exorbitant value, just tell him, okay, this is the rocket for you, we are ready to go, let's launch. So that's basically how we have been, that's the solution that we are really truly offering.
Thanks, Srinath. A while ago, you mentioned funding and fundraising. Let's talk a little bit about that some more now. You apparently raised funding from Pi Ventures last year. This year, you have funding of $11 million from Mayfield India, and you're also backed by the Anand Mahindra Group. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your fundraising strategy and where is all this funding going and what kinds of outputs you expect from all of this? Srinath?
Right. So I think one thing I've learned is, so we've raised 3 rounds of money so far. Happy and lucky to have these investors backing us. The first round was from Speciale. That was a seed round. Then the next round was a larger. That was about a $500,000 round. The second round was a pre-series A round led by Pi Ventures, which was 3.5-ish million. And now we have 11 million round led by Mayfield India. And I've realized one thing every round, even though I'm used to, I would like to say that I'm used to fundraising. every round is a new round. And it's like the first time I'm raising Series A. Doesn't matter whether I've raised pre-Series A before, because the approach, the expectations, and what people look for in the company is completely different. At a seed level, people are like purely betting on the founder, right? Like most likely you just have like an idea, probably a well thought out idea, but still it's an idea, a little bit of hardware, a little bit of code. At the second level, you're actually already starting to get prototypes out and show those things working. You're also showing an inclination of customers coming in. And then for Series A, it's completely different, because now you're actually trying to, take this basic version of the product and actually make it a fully working MVP, as they call it, right? Minimum viable product. And that involves a lot more intensity in terms of product realization, team, and customer approach, and all of those things also become different. So it has been like a very different journey, and every time I feel like I'm addressing the common audience is investors, but what they look for is completely different. It's like the same person is asking you a different question now, or rather is focusing on another set of questions now. So it was a big learning for me personally, because I do a lot of the pitches for the fundraise. I think, yeah, I mean, how did we meet people? But the first time was hard, because we didn't have any connect as such. We're just cold calling. By the way, I'm a big fan of cold calling. It has worked for me multiple times. Yeah, it's brute force. It's not the most efficient algorithm, but I think it's okay. If you can afford to take that effort, it does pay off. So the first time we met was, in a Thai event in Chennai, organized by ID Madras actually, or sorry, it was organized at ID Madras by Thai Chennai. So that's how it started, and met Speciale there, and then that happened. And after that, so because we had one investor backing us who was in the system, he was able to connect us with more people and so on. So the second round happened through referrals by Speciale, and of course some cold calling as well. And then the last round, the Series A round that we just closed, that was actually a good hybrid of existing investors connecting us, at the same time also, uh, people. I tried to get to people who actually were interested in investing in these kind of things by cold calling. So a lot of some of the angels, like for example, Mr. Mahindra came through a contact. Obviously, there are some other people who we literally, we wrote an email explaining who we are, and they read it and they actually responded, and things started. So yeah, it is mix of both. Yeah, I think fundraising has basically for space tech startups in India itself, forget AgniKul, right? I think has become easier in some sense, mainly because the government has opened up, the whole authorization of operating in this area through this in-space entity, right? So because of the existence of in-space, people are actually now understanding that there is a system in place, there is a framework in place to facilitate companies like us. Of course, the success depends on execution and product and all that, but at least it's not like there are no more questions like, can you launch, will the government allow you? All these questions are now brushed aside. So I think that has definitely helped the fundraise itself, particularly the last one.
Thanks, Srinath. That's two very good pieces of advice there for our founders. Number one, cold calling is okay, and cold calling does work. And secondly, every round of funding feels different. It always has some different set of questions and expectations. Let's turn now to another remarkable achievement of yours, which is you apparently can 3D print an entire rocket engine in one single block in 72 hours. And apparently, in February this year, you successfully test fired the world's first 3D printed rocket engine called Agnilet. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How does this work and how did you make it happen, Srinath?
Sure. So Agni-led testing. So let me talk about the engine for a second before the testing itself. So one thing we realized when we are making the product or making it accessible in like this 2-week time frame is engines take a lot of time to make, particularly liquid propulsion system engines, and that's mainly because they have so many parts. You literally are carefully welding thousands of parts together, and one error somewhere basically means the entire engine is gone. So it's high precision and not at all forgiving. That's typically how things work, right? So there was this push towards, can we explore something in, the 3D printing side, because it's simple. You basically let the machine take over and so on. And by the way, Professor, who I mentioned before, he was actually working on a few other projects, completely different applications, but he was already exposed to 3D printing, metal-based, metallic 3D printing, right? So that's where we started. We said, okay, we'll make a small part of the engine, 3D printed and try to test fire it. And that worked. And then we're like, okay, let us make a little more and let us make a little more. And we started growing it to the point where we decided we put in a little more effort, literally start to finish everything in the engine, starting from the place where the fuel enters all the way to the point where the exhaust leaves the system can be fully 3D printed, right? So we try to do that. There are a lot of challenges there because it is okay to put it together outside, but to make it one piece was really hard. But the team did an incredible job, I think. And of course, we are very thankful to people who advise us along the way, retired ISRO scientists we work with. And so we realized that engine. And then we realized that testing the engine is even harder because so many things have to come together. And even though we had tested engines before, it was not like the first test or something, in this form, no one has tested it before, or no one has even made an engine like this before, where everything what comes out of a 3D printer is a full rocket engine. It can pretty much just be put into the launch vehicle. So it was actually an interesting experience to go through that. We didn't know what it is going to look like. I mean, of course, all we did simulations and all these other things. Things look good, but yeah, when it finally worked, it felt really good. I think the team deserves all the credit there. They put in an extraordinary amount of effort in something where the outcome was not, 100%. We knew it'd be 95% guaranteed, but until you actually see that supersonic flame come out of the engine, it is always this 5% of uncertainty, right? So I think the team did a great job, and now we know that 100% 3D printed single piece engine is possible to realize. We've tested it for the duration we want. We've tested it thermally as well to make sure it takes the heat loads, and now we're working on qualifying it to actually put it in the vehicle itself.
Thanks, Srinath. You seem to have quite a remarkable team over there, and you also have some very good deals and agreements in place now. In December last year, you were one of among two startups to sign an agreement with the Department of Space. Tell us more about this big win. How did it happen, and what's it going to mean for you, Srinath?
Right. So I think this is the other free windfalls that all of the space tech startups in India got. I think we all got lucky in some sense. It looks like it was meant to be at that time. So right place, right time. So the Department of Space, actually, there was an announcement that came in June that they're going to set up this new parallel entity to ISRO called In Space, which was meant to authorize private missions and private efforts out of India for space tech. So we jumped at it. We wanted to ask them a lot of things. We wanted access to the testing facilities, access to some of the really good experts within ISRO, and understand how they do work and so on. So we reached out, and I think that the chairman ISRO actually had promised that he would not even wait for the whole thing to formally be through, and ISRO would already start encouraging people who are interested. So I wrote this email, and we got a reply from the chairman's office within a week's time, I would think. And since then, we started working on what exactly we will want from ISRO. Right? It's always easy to say you want this from ISRO, but then what exactly do you want? It's a tedious question to answer. Went through that documentation for a while, and then I think we agreed on what we would like to ISRO, and ISRO was generous enough to actually say that okay, yeah, they'll help us on these areas. And after that, I think it led to the signing of this agreement wherein they said, okay, now we can access ISRO facilities. And the good part of it is we were the first company to get there. So I still feel good that, we had the opportunity to pave the way for that, right? I think the companies that came after that would have definitely benefited from seeing the process already in place. So that happened. And now what that has allowed us to do is three things, right? One, gives a ton of credibility when you go fundraising, and and the world knows that there is ISRO directly supporting you with at least a few aspects of your solution. That helps. The second thing is we don't need to build out all of the infrastructure. uh, ISRO is ready to let us use some of its facilities that are already there. Third one is you work closely with people who have already launched rockets. And probably Agniban is a very small thing for them in some sense, because India's rockets, DSLV and PSLV, are huge, right, compared to what we are building. So always super glad to be talking to people who who have been there, done that, and who can actually directly guide us on Agniban building.
Thanks, Srinath. It's good to hear of these successes. Let's turn now to some of the challenges. One big challenge which everyone is facing these days is this whole COVID pandemic, which hit us so badly last year and even more severely this year. And apparently, you had to shut down some of your work involving liquid oxygen, and instead you made it available for those in need of medical oxygen. Was it tough for you? How did it interrupt your launch plans? What's it going to happen in the next few months and years? Where do you stand on this?
So I think, yeah, we actually, so right at the time when the oxygen crisis started to even emerge, as the first news started to come out, we immediately decided that, we will not be using liquid oxygen for any testing. It just didn't feel right. I mean, people were actually struggling for life, and, we can't be going ahead and doing LOX tests, liquid oxygen tests, base tests. So that's what we decided. The interesting thing is, so what we did, I mean, see, from a community health standpoint, because we talked to people, both gaseous oxygen and liquid oxygen vendors, regularly for our own work. We all saw this happen, right? People are asking on WhatsApp for people who are like, having oxygen availability. Local government authorities were asking, and we just we just gave it to the entire team and told them to spread it wherever they can, whenever they saw anything come up in any WhatsApp group or any group for that matter, right? And so hopefully that helped at least one or two people. But beyond that, I think what we have also what we also realize is the entire community here is hurt, right? It's not only about AgniKul as such. So in some sense, it has been very normalizing. Like, you literally hit a new normal where customers, vendors, suppliers, everyone, and yourself, everyone is now going to be through a period of less physical presence based activity, right? So we recalibrated our work priorities. We decided, because to build Agniban or any rocket, actually there's a lot of coding to be done, a lot of simulations to be run, and just a lot of sheer design work to be done. So we spent a lot of time in the last 1 or 2 months actually focusing on those things. So we didn't terribly miss not doing work, but of course the engine testing got a hit, right? I think we lost about 45 days, maybe 45 to 60 days. So that's definitely painful. But I think, as I said, because there are so many other things to do, it was almost like what we had planned for October, we moved it to now, and this would go there later. Not maybe the ideal way, but it's okay. At least it's not like it was a period of complete inactivity for the company. Also using this time to really adjust to the new normal, right? We need to come up with a system where there might be a wave 3 and there might be a wave 4, and we'll have to protect our employees and keep them safe, and at the same time keep moving. So what systems can we put in place that will allow for this, right? Who are the people to reach out to? How can we create, I mean, we are a startup, so not too many resources at hand, but what can we do to create our version of a bio bubble? Like, can we put on vaccination drives? Can we help people who are stuck in remote areas from the team actually go to the nearest hospital through some networks that we have? So we got onto this full-on mode of helping people out in the company and trying to figure out a system to handle probably wave 3. I hope it never comes, but we'd have to be prepared. So I think that is where we spent a lot of the time. Hopefully this will help us get through the next, if at all. I don't want it, but in case it comes, yeah, hopefully we can get through that.
Thanks, Srinath. Again, a good piece of advice there for the founders in the audience, which is be prepared and be resilient in case things change adversely again in the future. Srinath, another question I have is about another challenge, which is space junk. There apparently are thousands of satellites and even maybe lakhs of pieces of space junk circling the Earth. So, how bad a problem is this, and how important is it for us to control all this traffic in space? Srinath?
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, space debris is definitely a problem. And the interesting part about that is a lot of these objects are already detected, right? But you, of course, as you get smaller and smaller, you don't exactly, or you're not able to exactly track where the object is. But one thing that people do miss is the fact that space is huge. Right. I mean, yeah, it does look like lakhs of thousands of, I wouldn't say lakhs, I think there are thousands of, if you just actually count it, it'll be double digit thousands maybe in terms of number of pieces of debris. But I believe that it is still, space is so huge that it's not a pressing problem right away. That said, it is definitely a problem, no doubt about that. Most of these things actually decay and come back automatically, but then that takes time. That takes about 4 to 5 years. So I think what people are already doing is, there are certain agencies that are forcing their satellites to use that last 1 month or 2 months of operation time to actually deorbit themselves, right? You can actually make sure that by the time you know you're going to run out of battery or you're going to serve the end of your mission, you can actually start to slow yourself down. And once you slow yourself down enough and you're going through atmosphere, it'll further slow you down, and you just basically come burning down and completely, you completely get burned before you even hit the ocean. That's how most of these people are doing it. So I think the deorbiting protocols will become mandatory very soon. But that's just the way we have to respect our environment that we are working in, right? If you're using a road that others are also using, then we need to keep it clean, and that's basically exactly what's happening.
Thanks, Srinath. For the last few questions, let's take a look at the future now. One big question, of course, which arises is space regulation. So, who do you think should be in charge of, overseeing all these activities we just talked about? What's going to be the future of space regulation, Srinath?
So I think this future of space regulation in India is actually right now looking pretty good in my view. First thing is because the government has come out with this in-space entity that I already spoke about, right? So this is exactly for formulating policies, having authorization mechanisms, facilitating people who want answers to questions about who owns what and all that stuff. So that's great. I also think the second thing that has been happening over the last year or so, you're seeing policies come out on data, satellite data usage. You see policies for other network usage. There's a lot of things the government is putting out there for people to actually have a framework within which they will operate. So I think having a parallel vertical to ISRO within the Department of Space doing this is absolutely the best way to do it, because ISRO is also a stakeholder in the entire activities of the Department of Space. And instead of burdening them again with doing also rocket launching and satellites and Mars missions and authorization, now a new entity has been created, and that'll be at arm's length from ISRO and also at arm's length from any company that's approaching them. So it forms this nice, neat triangle, I think, and that'll be great for policy formulation and policy clarification going forward. A few more things will have to be ironed out specifically. I think the launch vehicle policy is still not completely out there. There are a couple of other things about, what is it? Is there a deorbiting protocol? And all these other things are still, the nuances are still being specced out. But I mean, compared to say where we were probably 2 years ago, I mean, we have made like leaps and strides really far ahead. So it looks definitely good. We are not we can proudly say that we are not a country without a very clear space framework anymore. We definitely have gotten past that hurdle. But that said, like anything else, any framework needs constant improvement, needs constant, it'll refine along with the people who are using it, right? So that same thing I think I also will see happen for the space tech system here as well.
Thanks, Srinath. We hope these frameworks keep improving in the future. My second future-oriented question for you is in terms of the overall market size. The global space market size is apparently about $350 billion, and India holds only about 3% of this. So, keeping that in mind, what kind of market share do you want to capture in the future? What are some of your plans for the next, say, 2 to 4 years? Srinath?
So I think we operate in one section of the entire space market, which is in the launch business. We are in the space transportation systems business. I think I think the reason maybe why India has occupied lesser percentage of that entire market is exactly so far till until very recently there was no direct guidance from the government, but now that has changed. So I think this is only going to grow up. I also think that the very fact that launch vehicles, more and more companies, right? So AgniKul is not the only small rocket company in the world. Obviously there are other people as well. When all these people start facilitating space access, right, more and more people will realize that, hey, space is also something I can use for a solution. So people who want to use it for monitoring projects, logistics, and so on, everyone will start using that. And so I think it is almost like having the ability to quickly go to space will literally create a larger customer base for people who want to go to space, who want to put things in space, because the boundary for the barrier has come down quite a bit. So that's one place I think that'll help us. Next 2 to 4 years for AgniKul, you would like to definitely perfect the art of launching multiple times a year, probably as much as probably at least once a month, if not maybe even more frequently. And we would like to also definitely perfect the whole system of that like what I explained, right? Like how you would buy a laptop kind of a model. This is my mass, this is the orbit, this is the altitude, this is my launch location, and boom, this is your rocket, and we'll help you get this to we'll help you get your satellite to space. So that is what we're going to be striving to be perfecting over the next 4 years or so.
Thanks. You shared a lot of insights in this industry and of your company. I'd like to ask to share some advice now. What is your message to the aspiring space tech entrepreneurs in these difficult times? In our audience, we have space tech entrepreneurs of all different ages and industries. What kind of advice, what kind of tips, some gyan would you give them? Srinath?
Number one, I think this is literally the best time to be doing space tech startups in India. Literally the best. Investors are there. The government is more and more working on better policy frameworks. Everyone is aware. I mean, it cannot get better. I think in every industry, in every country, there is going to be a sweet spot, right, for any product. I think for space tech, this is the time. So if you're waiting on the sidelines, thinking about a better time, don't wait, jump in. That'll be my first tip. Uh, Second thing, prepare for a new normal. I don't think COVID is going to, easily be manageable, right? You will have to work around it or with it. Don't wait for it to go away. Yes, we'll do vaccines, but we have to prepare for the worst and be ready to sail through that as well. Interestingly, most of space tech, there are a lot of things that have to be done physically in a physical area where people come together, but there's also a lot of things to be done from home. It is such a, more space tech involves engineering streams, everything from software to hardware to electrical to structural to mechanical. So I think you can still don't hold back because it's COVID times. Yes, it's a little harder, but I don't think it's impossible to solve. That's second. And lastly, I think like this is actually more of a general entrepreneur thing, but space tech is a little more demanding. Just be ready for that. It is not going to be a very smooth sail, and that is actually the bottom line for any startup, right? It's not going to be smooth. Space tech is a little less forgiving, meaning more things tend to fail, or it demands a certain level of rigor, right? So be prepared for that. More will be expected of you as a space tech startup founder compared to a non-space tech startup founder. So if you have that priced in, I think you should be fine. Like those are the two or three tips, I guess, right? Yeah, that I wanted to share.
Thanks, Srinath. That's a very inspiring and at the same time very practical advice. For the last two questions, I'd like to shift now to the question of money and finance. This whole show theme is money matters. So I want to ask you this question, which is, what is your relationship with money like? You shared some of the professional aspects of relationship with money. What about maybe some of your personal and even philosophical attitudes towards money? How do you value it? How do you want it to grow? What do you want to do with it, Srinath?
Interesting. Okay. So I mean, yeah, money is normalization tool, right? That's how we measure value, or how we have to communicate value of A and value of B, and they're completely different products. So money is basically the normalization tool. I think for a startup, money is basically cash, right? You can have equity, you can be valued whatever you want to be valued at. I mean, it doesn't matter. First thing I think is be super aware of a cash position of the company, and always be on top of it is what I would tell. And that's what it means to me. It's the lifeblood of running a startup, right? And particularly at a stage where we are in, where we are pre-revenue, right? This is literally the number one thing. Second, I think particularly for space tech, ISRO has been extremely smart in figuring out very interesting ways and tips and tricks to do tests at maybe one-fourth the cost of what the rest of the world would be doing it at, right? And that's probably because ISRO itself has come in a very tight budget so far, right? So all of the innovation has been, like, necessity is the mother of invention there. So being in a country like India, we should just embrace it. And just to be clear, it's not like subpar quality, or it's not like, oh, it's cheap tech so it's not good tech. That's not the point. It is smart tech that's cheap, which is really cool. I think we should all be thankful to ISRO for that. And being in this country, you do get access to that knowledge. So that's something, at least in the space tech world, you should really try to learn what ISRO is doing and try to not reinvent the wheel there. That's my second point. Third point about money, I would say, is I think it's a little difficult sometimes as an early stage startup to pay the right kind of salaries and stuff to people, right? And but do remember that most of the early employees might not be looking only at salaries, right? So have that conversation of what they really want. Money, I've come to learn that money doesn't satisfy everyone. Some people want a few other things, and it's normal, right? Not everyone's need is just money or cash or something. So in that standpoint, it's also good to know that, particularly when working with people and addressing their needs, it's always good to have this thing of, okay, what else does this person need besides money? And just having that thought actually really helps, I think, hire the right kind of people as well. So those are a couple of points I just wanted to share.
Thanks, Srinath, for pointing out the challenges and also some ways around those challenges when it comes to finance. My last question for you would be, you worked a lot with investors, you're talking to lenders, banks, and so on. What are some of your expectations from lenders, banks to better meet a business's banking and financial needs?
So I think the banks and larger financial institutions sometimes try to normalize, a startup along the same lines as how they would look at a big company like a Fortune 500 company or a listed company, right? VCs clearly don't do that. VCs look at startups as startups and a larger company as larger company. That's private equity. Private equity doesn't look at the same things like a typical a VC who's looking at a smaller company. But those things somehow, once you go into the debt market or large financial institutions, that seems to get gray. Like everyone is compared to the same benchmark, same set of metrics, which to me doesn't directly seem to add up. Like it feels like there should be more effort. And of course we understand that startups are more risky, right? But then again, to evaluate that risk, a new set of systems have to be put in place. Otherwise, a bank, like we have approached certain banks for loans and stuff, and we find it a little, I'm intrigued actually that they want to hold us to the same standard that they will hold a much larger company. So that part was a little surprising to me. There is venture debt that's picking up today, which is interesting, definitely, right? But then again, the interest rates are high for a reason. I mean, there is a lot of risk premium embedded in there, but I mean, I guess that's how things will have to be. But yeah, at least from a finance institution standpoint, that was something that I wish will change as we go through the process, as there are more startups out of India and more deep tech startups out of India.
Thanks so much, This has been a very informative and inspiring session for us. Three key takeaways from me, if I could summarize, are the three P's: positioning, precision, and partnerships. Positioning, make sure which part of the market you want to address. Precision, make sure you have quality, etc., of the highest standards. And three, partnerships. You need partnerships from government and bigger industry players to succeed in this business. Srinath, thank you so much. They often say that startups are like rockets. You literally are in the rocket business. It's been very inspiring to hear from you. Thank you so much, Srinath.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.